And I always think back to, the mid 90s and late 90s when I was in college and high school, where you saw a ton of rappers that were name dropping Donald Trump in all these songs. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that because all of them looked at Donald Trump as this unapologetic, brash guy that really pushed his success, his power plays, the art of the deal, all this stuff kind of made it what men look at as, okay, this is what I want. And men of all backgrounds. And
Chat, what do we think about Stalker 2, by the way, the video game? Like, is it good, or what are people saying about it? It's mid, it's glitchy. Okay.
I think that, you fast forward to what happened in this election and the dynamics of the populace of people that voted for Trump, men, women, Hispanic, white women, men in general, black men. It really showed that this election kind of teetered towards that, the catering towards men. And so it's just a thing where, you look at it and Trump has made a name off himself from doing this. And I think that was a big part of why he won the election.
Scott, I'll let you jump in a second, but I think you might find this interesting. Scott Galloway, who has a podcast, many podcasts, but he's working on a book about.
Oh, thank God we have Scott Galloway's take on this, man.
What's going on with men
I was really wondering what he had to say about men.
Country. He writes this: young American men are in a crisis of underemployment, under-socialization. Soaring college costs affect people regardless of their gender, but manufacturing jobs, once a ticket to the middle class for men without college degrees, have been offshored.
Okay, never mind. He's actually not wrong. Okay, I'll give this to him. Scott Galloway once famously said the reason why people protest at the behest of Palestinians is because they don't get pussy. Okay? Like actual freak shit. That right there was enough for me to discount like anything he will ever say for the future. Although I will reluctantly admit his analysis here is correct.
Housing is increasingly unaffordable. Men are stuck. They are isolated, despair.
Yeah, his takes on men are fine, with the exception of anything Israel related. When you hear shit that he says about Israel, stay the fuck away. Oh,
President Biden and Vice President Harris are giving away this military base. They're giving it away.
God, I fucking hate Congress so much.
And unproductive, prone to obesity, drug addiction, and suicide, susceptible to misogyny, conspiracy theories, and radicalization. They make inadequate mates, employees, and citizens. It's a pretty dire picture that he paints there, and it seems what he's saying is that Trump spoke to that.
Well, I agree. First of all, I agree with most of everything that's been said here already. I agree with some of this assessment. I do think we have a crisis of especially young men in this country. And they're, in many ways, disconnected from the rest of their families, disconnected from their communities, disconnected from our political culture, disconnected from our civil culture. And that's a real problem for a society that depends on all of us to be engaged and working together to make it as good of a country and as good of a society as it can be. I think the Democrats in this election made men feel like that the patriarchy is over, boys, and we're going to put you in the back seat for a while, and you're just going to have to accept it without any thought to the ramifications of telling.
Oh, no, dude, what? Oh, my God. Thank God. Okay, I hate this shit. I hate this shit so much. Oh, dude, men were comfortable with the patriarchy for far too long, and now the patriarchy's over, boys. You just have to sit back and expect it is obviously going to cause people to be fucking angry and resentful. First of all, the analysis is so stupid because it's the other side. This right here is literally the other side of the analysis that like a lot of rad libs make, right? Where it's like, there is a correct attitude to have here, and rad libs are closer to the correct attitude in general, which is that a sense of entitlement under a patriarchal construct is what causes a lot of men to be genuinely frustrated with like women's equality. Okay? That part is correct, but it's not the entire subject. While that assessment is ultimately correct and it plays a role in the radicalization of young men, okay? The notion that the notion that that is the major reason and that, you know, the solution to that is to simply overturn it and go back to business as usual, put women back in the kitchen is fucking idiotic. Okay? This is Hasan gold level of analysis being displayed on CNN. I mean, he's the staple Republican guy anyway. Here's the problem, okay? When you're accustomed to a lifetime of privilege, equality feels like oppression, obviously. But besides that, this becomes a trigger point, like a pivotal point for a lot of young men because they've been told in their upbringing that things were going to be different and that they have developed a sense of entitlement. But none of that would matter if their lives, if their material conditions and the crisis that they're experiencing in terms of like no future prospects, for example, was solved. This doesn't mean that there wouldn't be any misogyny whatsoever. Of course there would be. But the goal should always be to try and solve the systematic problems facing men and women, just everybody in general, so that there is less volatility, less instability, and less room for vulnerability that causes men to find themselves in the throes of this kind of reactionary sentiment. Okay? And I don't think the solution is to say, I abhor this conversation as a black woman, cry me a fucking river. I don't think that's the solution at all. Because that only just like redefines the ranks. And I understand where you're coming from when you say that. I do. But if we're talking about solutions, then yeah, you can't say that like intrinsically all these people are evil and that they're irredeemable pieces of filth and they should just suck it the fuck up and die or cry. Okay? Now, ultimately, there are real concerns that are there are real concerns for facing all men and women alike. And we should be seeking to solve said issues. We should be seeking to solve said problems. Okay? Engaging in what redefines the ranks? Like, are you scared that black women will suddenly be in power because you acknowledge depression? Come on. Wait, what do you mean? Ultimately, Asmongold made a video about you. That's awesome. Hell yeah. I think that there are unhelpful ways of approaching this subject matter. And I think one of them is just to like immediately put up the defensive shield to be like, well, fuck them. And I get where people are coming from when they say that. I really do. Because you are subjected to the same fucking dog shit conditions. And on top of that, what? You're supposed to fucking capitulate to people who are crying about you receiving equal treatment, and then through that reception, thriving, at least doing better than your male counterparts. That's ridiculous, right? Like, I don't think we should be entertaining the whims of crybabies, okay? But I do personally think that there are solutions to this stuff, but they require they certainly require doing something the Democratic Party refuses to do, which is address the underlying material inequalities from the basis of class and focus on universality rather than trying to identify different segments and trying to identify different segments of the population and then like hyper targeting to them with like wishy-washy focus tested policy solutions that most people just don't really appreciate at all.
People who are out honestly trying to make a living, provide for their families, be good husbands, be good fathers. When you tell people who are doing their level best that either A, it's not good enough, or B, you're part of the problem, what do you expect? And then finally, as a political tactic, you know, the attempt to put walls on the ticket, and that was going to somehow solve all of the problems that had been built up for years, was ridiculous, because it turns out Walz was the last person that men wanted to hear from. And I remember at the beginning of that whole campaign, when they put him on, I sat right here, and people were like, oh, they got camouflaged hats. They're going to be wearing them in the deer stands this fall. And I think to your point that you just made, that was not, that idea that it was not formulated by a bunch of dudes who actually go deer hunting. It was come up with by a bunch of people who've never met a dude that actually goes deer hunting. But when you try to put that kind of window dressing on a real communications problem or a real relationship problem, it gets exposed immediately.
I did a fun little experiment. I knew we were going to be talking about this tonight. So I have a text chain that's been going on with my friends from college and law school for about 15, 16 years. It's all guys. Some are married, some are not. Some have kids, some do not. Some are former Democrats. They are all MAGA now. So I sent them a text and I said, I'm coming on the show. We're going to discuss this issue of masculinity and MAGA. Can you give me some PG thoughts? I'm going on a family show here too.
Yeah, he's a big bad guy. They don't have PG thoughts in the text thread, baby.
You may not be familiar with what
give
we
us,
do here.
give us the
We'll go to
real version of
PG-13
the
if you
PG
want.
thoughts.
Well, we're definitely not going to be reading the text. I will put it to I heard a few certain things. MAGA is fun. MAGA is fun. I heard it time and again from each one. Yeah, MAGA is fun. One of them said, MAGA equals football and beer. The left equals HR and tofu. That was one of the nicer ones. Trump speaks to me. He speaks like a normal person. He's not a robotic politician. We can have a debate over what he says, but he speaks to them as a normal person. But the one thing that came across from all of them was, I'm sick of being told what to do. I'm sick of the media telling me what to do. I'm sick of the woke left telling me what to do. I'm sick of government telling me what to do.
The U.S. Embassy is closed for the day after a...
All right, updates on Russia, Ukraine.
receiving information about a potential air attack. The embassy has told employees to shelter in place and U.S. citizens elsewhere in the capital to be ready if an air alert is announced. Meanwhile,
It breaks my heart when I see my male counterparts suffering. When I try to talk to them about what's really hurting them, they can't accept it. There's such a huge problem where men are conditioned to never see themselves as a victim, forces they cannot immediately change. I mean, that's one aspect of it. Okay.